Let's jump in. Matthew chapter 5, the very first verse, it says this: when he saw the crowds, that's Jesus, he went up on the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him. Now we'll stop there for a second, because now we know why it's called the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus goes up into the mountain or into the hillside, and he sits down, he preaches this message. But I want you to notice something that's not written in Matthew's gospel that we would not understand unless we did some study, and that is, there is something really significant being communicated here because of where Jesus goes to preach this message. It's more than just the location. Here Jesus goes up into these mountains or these hills beside the Sea of Galilee, most likely. And what's significant about this is that this is where revolutionaries of the day would go and gather people to them and preach this revolutionary message. And so it was a safe place to be away from the Roman soldiers and the Roman government. It was a safe place also to be away from the Jewish religious leaders. And so this was a safe place. If I wanted to start a revolutionary movement, I would go up into these hills and I would gather people around and I would preach this revolutionary message and I would just get people all fired up, okay? And so here's Jesus. He doesn't go into the synagogues of Galilee. He doesn't go into the temple in Jerusalem. He doesn't go out into the streets, at least at first. He goes up into the mountains, into the hills, because he's about to deliver a revolutionary message. It's going to be huge. It's a message that would be a threat to both the Roman leaders and to the Jewish leaders. And not only that, make no mistake, this message that Jesus is going to preach from this mountainside, I believe, is a threat to us Americans. It's totally different than how we think and how we were brought up. As we study this text, we're going to be confronted with the fact that Jesus' game plan for our lives looks a lot different than the game plan that has been implanted in our brains here in America. That God's dream for our lives is different than the American dream that we've learned and grown up with. All right? So now, verse 2. Simply, he began to teach them. He began to teach them. And throughout the Gospels, we see this word attributed to Jesus. He's called rabbi. Rabbi means teacher. And in those days, a rabbi was often one of the most educated people in society. People would go to a rabbi in order to learn what the law meant. Tell me what the Torah or the law is. And so these rabbis would have their own interpretations and their own meanings for different rules and scriptures that are found in the scriptures, and they would explain and interpret the scriptures for the people. And so what the people would do, they would kind of latch on to a certain rabbi based on what the rabbi would teach. If he maybe agreed with the rabbi's interpretation, he would say, yeah, I want to follow this guy. That makes sense, okay? And so here's what's interesting. The people would call the rabbi's interpretation or his preaching or his teaching a pretty neat word. They called it his yoke. Not like an egg yolk, okay? I know we're not farmers in here, but a yoke, of course, is what a farmer would use, like a harness or a thing that would go around the neck of an animal, a large animal like an ox or something like that, that he would use to steer and direct his animal as he would plow a field, let's say. So these people would call a rabbi's teaching or his interpretation a yoke, which directed them in their lives. And so these people would latch on to these rabbis, again, based on the interpretation, whether they not would agree with these things. And Jesus comes along, and here on the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus is saying, here is my yoke. Here's my direction for your life. And what you're going to find out is that it's different. It's a lot different than all these other rabbis' yokes out there. In fact, you're going to hear a phrase often repeated in the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus is going to say, you have heard that it was said. All these rabbis have been teaching you one thing. And then he's going to say, but I'm going to tell you something different. It's going to look different than what you were accustomed to. And so Jesus' yoke is revolutionary. This is different. It's going to change the world. And so the question for us to maybe wrestle with as we go throughout this message series is, what yoke is guiding me? Whose teaching, whose direction, whose inspiration am I following in my life? And maybe this year, as we come into this new year, 3 days away, perhaps we could evaluate who is giving direction for our lives. Whose vision am I living out? What path are we headed down? And what really is my game plan? Whose yoke am I following? For the rest of our time, I want to focus then now on this third verse where Jesus begins his message. I believe that could be this third verse could be like the crux of the whole message. If we don't kind of follow this verse, everything kind of unravels. And we'll get to that here in a second. But in verse 3, Jesus begins his message there on the Sermon on the Mount. He's gathered his people together, and he says this in verse 3, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs." Blessed are the poor in spirit, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. And like I said, this could be the key verse for the entire message for the Sermon on the Mount, what Jesus is going to preach. Jesus gets his people together and he says, listen, you want to be happy? Do you really want to be happy? You really want to find a joy in life that no one could ever take away? I'm going to tell you the secret. Jesus says, it's blessed are, happy are, joyful are the poor. And right off the bat, Jesus' message is revolutionary. It doesn't make any sense. How can the poor be happy? It's opposed to the way that we've learned to think and to live. Blessed are the poor. Now, some of you may be thinking, hey, this is great. I'm broke. This is a good thing then because I'm poor. And Jesus says, I'm blessed. All right? I'm broke, but I'm blessed. Now, we don't think this way here in America. This is way against how we think about life. In America, it's not blessed are the poor. It's blessed are the rich. Why is that? Blessed are the rich. Well, I think we mistakenly connect this word blessed with being rich, with being wealthy. In fact, we like to use those words interchangeably. You might go over to a wealthy person's house. It might be a big mansion or a really decked out place, and you walk into the place, and you might say to your buddy, wow, man, this is a great place. This is awesome. And that rich person might say, well, yeah. He's not going to say, I know, thanks a lot. I'm just rich. He's not going to say that. No, what's he going to say? He's going to say, well, thank you very much. It's because I'm blessed. We've equated blessings with wealth, and unrightfully so. It's inappropriate to say otherwise, but we've connected blessings with wealth. And we've got to be careful here. Jesus isn't necessarily talking about money in this situation, in this verse. He says, blessed are the poor in spirit, and it's not necessarily about money. In fact, there are two Greek words for the word poor. And one of the words actually means it speaks to a person's financial state, what he has, what he doesn't have, and that kind of thing. The other Greek word, which is the one that's used here, is a little different. It goes beyond this monetary description. In fact, the word for poor here, poor in spirit here, could be translated, blessed are the, get this, blessed are the powerless. Blessed are the helpless. Blessed are the afflicted or the needy or those who are lacking. It's this deeper state of poverty than just a financial state. It doesn't have to really do with money. It's who you are and this need. So Jesus gathers his people together. If you could imagine being on the mountaintop, he gathers them together and he says simply, here's where my game plan begins. He says, you want to be really happy, you want to have joy in life that nobody else can take away, here's what you got to do. Blessed are those who are powerless. Blessed are those who are helpless. Blessed are those who are needy. Who's in? I wonder if he took a poll. I doubt it. You know, nobody would sign up for that. No way. And I think it might be difficult for some of us sitting in this room today because, man, you know, for many of us, maybe we've been pursuing a game plan that goes in the complete opposite direction of poor in spirit. We've been pursuing a game plan that says, man, I want people to think that I'm rich in spirit, that I'm strong enough and clever enough and that I'm creative enough and that I can just do it. I'm capable enough myself. The yoke of our world has taught us, blessed are the rich in spirit, blessed are the capable. The yoke of our world has said that. It's not blessed are the helpless, it's blessed are the capable. It's not blessed are the needy, it's blessed are those who don't need anything. Blessed are the independent. It's what we've grown accustomed to. That's our yoke that we're being taught. Thinking about this, then no one gets an award for being poor in spirit, right? Well, I mean, you think about the awards that are given out for sports and everything. It's probably coming, though. Everybody gets an award nowadays. But anyway, nobody gets an award for being poor in spirit. There's no place on a resume, right, for poor in spirit. You're not going to find a politician this coming year who's going to run on a platform for being poor in spirit. That's not going to happen. It's not a thing. And I'm sure you're going to be sitting around. Maybe you're going to make a resolution for 2020. And I'm sure one of those things that's not going to be on the list is poor in spirit. We're just not going to go there, right? Yet this is where Jesus' vision begins for your life. He starts out his sermon, his message on this mountain. He starts it out and he says, here's what I need you to do. You want to be blessed? You want to be happy? You want to have real joy in your life that no one can take away? Be poor in spirit. Be needy. Be needy. How? What does that look like? You can't skip over this. Can't skip over it. What does it look like to be poor in spirit? The rest of our time, I'll give you 3 things that I think if you're going to be poor in spirit this year in 2020, these are 3 things that you're going to say every single day because it's going to have to happen, all right? Write these in your notes. The first thing that we're going to say in 2020, if I'm going to be poor in spirit, is I can't. I can't. It begins right here. It begins by humbling ourselves and saying, I can't. I can't. It's the polar opposite of the rich in spirit mantra. You can read any self-help book out there. One of the common themes that they're going to tell you is you got to have this positive self-talk, right? You got to stand before the mirror and pump yourself up, right? I am confident. I am capable. You can do this. I am strong enough. I have what it takes. I am deserving and worthy of every good thing that will happen in my life. I. And we pump ourselves up, and that's the whole theme of self-help books. But those who are poor in spirit, they're not going to say that. They're going to say, I'm not capable. I'm not strong enough. I don't have what it takes. I'm not worthy. I can't save myself. I can't redeem my mess. I can't change myself. We're going to say, I can't. I can't. And again, this is going against everything that we've ever learned. Now, I don't want you to walk out of here this morning feeling defeated and ready to quit, okay? It gets better. Just hang with me for a couple moments here. But saying, I can't, is where it begins. It's about humbling ourselves. Jesus says in Luke 18:14, he says, humble yourself and you'll be exalted. God will lift you up. Humble yourself. This is key to the vision that Jesus has for your life. It's not about having a life of insignificance or insecurity. It's not about that at all. In fact, it's letting go of your pride and opening up your hands so that God can pour out His blessings in your life, His strength and His power in order to lead you to a life of significance and security in His kingdom. Because you are somebody in God's kingdom. You are a child of God. And a father knows how to give good gifts to his children. But it starts with, I can't. The Message paraphrases Matthew 5:3. I like this. It's kind of commentary of what's going on here. It says, you're blessed when you're at the end of your rope. You ever feel that way? Like, come on, man, I'm at the end of the rope. I just want to throw in the towel, right? But he's saying, you're blessed when you're there because with less of you, there is more of what? You believe that? When we lower ourselves, when we make ourselves and say, I can't do this, there's more of God, which leads me to the second point, and that is the second thing we're going to say is that I can't, God, you can. God can do it. It's recognizing God's power and God's strength so that He can do what He does best, and that is work through us. You can't, but God can. And I think there's incredible freedom in this. And maybe God is waiting for some of you to do this even today. That He's waiting for you to say, you know what, the yoke that I've been wearing is not working. The yoke that I've been listening to, the message of the world, it's just not working. I need something different. I can't. But God, you can. In this scenario, I think of Moses. I always go back to Moses, and what a life he led, and the things he got to see. And so here's Moses. He's standing in front of this bush that's on fire, and it's not burning up. And of course, that's the Lord in that form. And he's standing on holy ground. And God says to Moses, He tells him straight up, Moses, here is my game plan for you and your life. Here's what I need you to do. Many of us, we go through life and we wonder, what does God want me to do? And if He were to appear to us like He did to Moses and just laid it all out, here's what I need you to do. I wonder how many of us would listen. Here he is, Moses standing before God, and God says, here's what I need you to do, Moses. I need you to go back to Egypt. It's been 40 years. Leave your cushy job with your father-in-law. Leave this life. Go back to Egypt. And I want you to go stand before the most powerful man in the world, the most powerful ruler in the world, the name Pharaoh. And I want you to tell him, let my people go. Oh boy. Now we've got a direct message from God. How many of us in that moment go, nope, I'm sorry I even asked. That's kind of what Moses does. He says, I can't do that. In fact, one of the excuses that Moses uses is, I'm not a good speaker. I can't talk. I'm not eloquent. In fact, I stutter, Lord. I can't do this. What does God do? He doesn't say, oh, now come on, Moses, you can do this. Oh, come on, repeat after me, Moses. I am capable. I can do it. And I can live out the beautiful dream that No, He doesn't do that. No, God says to Moses, listen, dude, who made your mouth? I am going to give you the ability to speak. In fact, I will fill you with the words to say. You don't worry about it at all. In fact, I'm going to send your brother-in-law with you too, or your brother Aaron with you, and he's going to speak on your behalf. It's going to work out fine. But I think Moses had to get to this place where it was, I can't, so that he could say, God, you can. And there he was, Moses. He had a front row seat to the most amazing things that God ever did in the history of humankind. Because he knew he himself could not do it. But with God, he could. Maybe that's what needs to happen in your life. God, you can. I can't, but you can. Zechariah 4:6. I love this verse. Let's read this verse together. Can we do that? All right. Ready? Not by strength or by might, but by my Spirit, says the Lord of armies. You can't do it. You can't do it. It's only by God's Spirit that you're going to make life happen. Maybe you're living life and you're wondering why life is such a struggle sometimes. You can't figure it out. Like, why does it just feel like I just can't get over the hump or whatever? For a lot of us, I think it really comes down to this. There's just not much faith in it. There's not much faith in it. You vastly underestimate what God is capable in your life, and you don't fully believe in His strength and His might and His grace, that it's sufficient enough for you, as Paul said. I like to use the phrase, God's got this. That drives my wife crazy. It doesn't mean that you can't get angry, you can't get sad, or life's going to beat you down. It doesn't mean you can't be upset about it. It just means that in my sorrow, or in my weakness, or in my whatever I'm going through in this moment, God's got this. I got faith. We'll get through it. He's going to get us through somehow. I love to say that because it's so true. God's got this. He can, I can't, is what it comes down to. And it kind of leads me into the third thing, and that is those who are in poor in spirit in 2020, you're going to say every day, God, please help me. God, please help me. There's a survey that asked people what their favorite Bible verse was. Of course, you could imagine how astounding the results were. One of the top answers was, cleanliness is next to godliness. I've read this many times through. It's not in there. I think that was something your parents told you to get you to clean your room, maybe. I don't know. It's not in there. Another one that was brought up was, God helps those who help themselves. Not in there either. In fact, if it were going to say something along those lines, it would probably say, God helps those who can't help themselves and know it. It's so true, who can't help themselves and they know it. You want to know who God really helps? Here it is. God helps those who are humble and who are penitent in spirit. That's who God helps. You want to know who God runs to? God doesn't run to the powerful who say, I can do this, or I've got this. God runs to those who say, I don't have it. I can't do it, and I need your help, Lord. I need your power, Lord, to get through this. It's at that point, I want to encourage you. We're going to look at this Psalm 86. David prays this beautiful prayer where he is relying on the Lord's help in his moment of crisis. And I would encourage you, I'm just going to share a few verses from Psalm 86. I'd encourage you to read the whole psalm because it is good. And I want to encourage you, when you get to these moments in your life where you're just saying, man, I can't do this anymore. Be reminded God can. I want you to pray, Lord, please help me. Look at what Psalm 86 says. David cries out to the Lord. He says, listen, Lord, and answer me, for I am poor. I am needy. Protect my life, for I am faithful, important. He says, you are my God. Save your servant who trusts in you. Then he says, be gracious to me, Lord, for I call to you all day long. Bring joy to your servant's life, because I appeal to you, Lord. Verse 5, for you, Lord, are kind and ready to forgive. He's right there, like a good father, abounding in faithful love to all who call on you. He says, Lord, hear my prayer. Listen to my plea for mercy. I call on you in the day of my distress, for you will answer me. Read the rest of the psalm. It's amazing what David says. But basically, it comes down to these three things. I can't. Lord, you can. God, please help me. That's what it comes down to. In 2019, maybe you struggled in your marriage and you can't do it anymore. Guess what? God can. In 2019, maybe your health was not the greatest. You're battling cancer or heart disease or COPD or something else. You can't, but God can. In 2019, you thought you'd be further ahead in your finances. You can't do it. God can. This past year, maybe for you it hasn't been all it's cracked up to be, and maybe you're not sure if you're following God's plan for your life, and you didn't do maybe that well in school, or maybe you had a moral failure that you just can't get past. Maybe something happened. You've got some secrets in your life that you know if your friends found out, or if your family found out, they'd probably disown you. You've got stuff going on in your life, and maybe 2019 wasn't the greatest for you. 2020 is 3 days away, and maybe it's time to rewrite your game plan for your life. Some of you are going to take to reading books, and some of you may go to counseling, and some of you may go to conferences to figure it all out. And that's all good. There's nothing wrong with those things. But every day in 2020, what would happen if you got on your knees and prayed every single day, I can't, but God, you can, and Lord, please help me. What would that look like for your life? That's where Jesus needs us to start. Without that, the rest of the sermon, it won't amount to much in our lives. We're going to be frustrated trying to figure it all out. Let me pray for you. Father, this morning I pray that you would help us to become humble and courageous. I know that, Lord, you would not want us to walk around feeling defeated or discouraged. That's not your plan for your people. You would not want us to walk around with insecurity or feeling like we're just not good enough. I know that's not your will for us. You want us to walk with your confidence and your power and your strength and your spirit. God, I know that We can only receive that which we let go of our own. And so in this moment, in this room, would you help us to be honest? That you would help us to really say, I can't, but you can. Please help us. I know that you go to those who are humble in heart, Lord, and those who are penitent in spirit. And so help us as we begin this new year to recognize our need and our dependence on you. Help us, Lord, to see that the key to unlocking what you have for us, unlocking your vision for our lives, your game plan for our lives, begins with just a recognition that we need you and that we are dependent on you. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.